Alright, this is going to be the final advanced video for intervals, and I'm actually going to be talking to you about how I actually think about intervals on the fly in the classroom without having that handy-dandy chart with everything in there. And I'm going to include these in the notes towards the bottom. So this is the advanced method, and I think actually about the key signatures for this. And my first question I have to answer is, does the top note fit into the key signature? So in order to answer this question, I'll come over here to my music theory document, and I'm going to create this interval right here. So first of all, to think about what my key signature is, I'm going to look at this bottom note. I think this is in my notes here. Yeah, so using the bottom note, imagine this should be major key signature that has the same letter name as that note. For example, if the note is D, you're going to imagine D major, and D major has two sharps. So up here, I'm going to think about the key of F. The key of F has one flat in it, and you can think about that as F is Do. You're going to work your way up to Fa for that last flat. So I'm imagining the key of F, and I'm going to actually change that in here. So now I'm in the key of F. Oh, it changed my notes. Bad music program. Work your way down. One more. And back down to D. Alright, so imagining that key signature, I know that F has one flat, everything else is natural. My top note is a D. The next question is, does that D fit into the key signature? Or is it a sharp or a flat? The correct answer to this one is yes, it does, because there is no flat or sharp on the D over here, and so this D works. Okay. Now, once I have that, here is a whole slew of questions that I start to ask myself. So, if the answer to that question is yes, and the quantity or the number is a 2, 3, 6, or 7, then the quality is major. And in this case, that works because the distance is a sixth, and so this is a major sixth, and that fits into the key signature. Now, if I bring this down to a C, and I have an F and a C, that still fits within the key signature. Down here in my notes, I have the quantity is a 4 or 5. That's yes. And then the quality is perfect. So this would be a perfect fifth. Now, here's where it starts to get more complicated. If the answer is no, it does not fit into the key signature. For example, if this was a C, I'm going to start with a D sharp. Actually, no, I'm going to go D flat. So that does not fit into the key signature because a D flat, there's no flat on the D over here. So D flat is not in the key of F. So no, looking down here, those are actually the simple ones. Here we go. So here's no, and the quantity is 2, 3, 6, or 7. You're going to go through a two-step process. First of all, ask this question. Figure out if the note is higher or lower than what it would be if it did fit into the key signature. So I have a D flat. The note that would fit into the key signature is actually a D natural, just a regular old D with nothing on it. So if it is a flat, like it is, that means it is lower. So coming back to my step-by-step process, if it's lower, I need to figure out how much lower. So that's when I can use my keyboard. So I have a normal D, and then I have a D flat. That's only a half step lower than it normally would be. And so in this case, it is a minor chord, or a minor interval. So this would be a minor sixth. Now, if it was a whole step lower, like 2 notes, there's actually a thing called a double flat, which is not going to let me do that, maybe. Can I put another flat on there? How do I double flat this thing? A double flat essentially just has 2 flats on it. I don't know why I can't add a double flat. Well, there'd be 2 flats on there, so I'm just going to make my cursor sit up here. There we go. So a D double flat essentially looks like that. There's 2 flats next to it. So this is a whole step, or 2 half steps lower than it normally would be. So here's my D. Here's a D flat. Here's a D double flat. So this is 2 half steps, 1 whole step lower. And if that's the case, back over here in my notes, 1 step lower is actually a diminished chord. Okay, 1 step is the same thing as a major second, or 2 half steps. So if it's a whole step lower, then it is diminished. And that's only if the quantity is 2, 3, 6, and 7. So if I go back here and I move this up to an E flat. Actually, let's go E sharp, just for the fun of things. So an E sharp does not fit into my key signature of F, because there's only a B flat. So an E sharp, it does not fit into the key signature. This time it's actually higher, because a normal E is here and E sharp is here. So that doesn't quite work. So if higher, I'm really just stopping here. If it's 1/2 step higher, which is an E to an E sharp is 1/2 step higher, then the quality of this interval right here is an augmented seventh. Okay, an augmented seventh is actually the same thing as a perfect, or just as an octave as well. So this is an augmented second. The super advanced level of this, you would add doubly augmented and doubly diminished. So if I had an F double or an E double sharp up here, a double sharp, it kind of looks like a little X. Again, I'm kind of unfamiliar about how to do this in my music publishing software here, but it kind of looks like a little X, or like almost like the Under Armour symbol. If you have an E double sharp right here, this would create it and make it doubly augmented. Or if you had somehow where it was 1.5 steps lower, it'd be doubly diminished. Okay, so moving on to the next part here, looking at the quantity of fourths, fifths, and octaves. We really only work with a diminished or augmented. So we already looked at the diminished and augmented notes when it was a fifth. So a lowered note on a fifth is a diminished fifth, or an added. Ooh, there's a double flat. How'd that work? Or if we just add a sharp. Actually, this case would be a natural. Sorry about that. We would consider this an augmented fourth, because that is just 1/2 step higher than it should be. Let's move on and just look at a different key signature. I'm going to work in the key of D. So the key of D, if you think about the key of D having sharps, you work your way down to T, has a C sharp, and the order of sharps goes fat cats. So there are 2 sharps in the key of D. So I'll go and write that in. And it changed my note for me again. So thinking in the key of D, and I will just put in a note right here. So this note, if I would write, I would have to have a sharp next to it. I'll insert that. So if this was my note with my interval, I have a C sharp, and there's also a C sharp in the key signature. So that means that this C sharp does fit into the key of D. So when we go over to my step-by-step process, the answer was yes. And so the quantity or the number is a 7. So this note right here, a C sharp from a D, would be a major seventh. Okay. If I work my way down to an F sharp, I'm leaving the sharp on there. My quantity is a third, and the F sharp does fit into the key signature because I had an F sharp up there on the top. And so the answer is yes, it does fit into the key signature, and the quantity is a third, so this is a major third. Okay, moving up here, let's put in a B flat. So I'm just going to add a flat to that. A D flat does not fit into that key signature because there is no flats, and if there was, there would be a flat over here in the key signature. So a D flat does not fit into the key signature, and I know I have a sixth here. So I go over here to no, and the quantity is a sixth. So figure out if the note is higher or lower than it would be. A normal B without a flat would fit into this key signature. That means a B flat is lower. So I would think about the fact that it's only 1/2 step lower. So here's a B, fits in the key of D, and this goes 1 lower to a B flat. So a 1/2 step lower, and a 1/2 step lower over here is minor. So that is just a minor sixth, little m6. All right, so that's a little bit about how I figure out those things on the fly. I actually cannot tell you off the top of my head how many half steps are in a augmented sixth or an augmented seventh or even like a regular or perfect fifth. I don't really know that off the top of my head because that's not actually the way I learned. What I discovered though as I was teaching was that this chart was actually a lot easier to memorize. and a lot easier to remember, because especially for maybe a beginner, because that whole thing about having that chart memorized, I always thought in key signatures because I knew that really well. And so if that's how you think as well, feel free to use my method I just taught you. Like, does it fit in? Okay, is it lower or higher? And then it's this, or then it's that, and those sorts of things. And so that's how I think about intervals, and maybe that's how you do too. If not, don't worry about this. You can go the other route as well. Thanks for watching. This is the last advanced thing that is happening. So spend some time with that over the weekend. Thanks.